In the upcoming panel discussion on decoding new digital economy, industry experts aims to focus on CFO's overview on how they are realigning their companies according to the new digital economy. I would like to invite Amol Dete, editor ET-CFO, to moderate this discussion. Over to you, Amol.
Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for staying back and staying connected with the top CFOs of India Inc. We are mapping the reality in the abnormal world in our special conclave turning point. I'm moving ahead with another meaningful session, decoding the new digital economy. The pandemic has strengthened the new digital economy. While there are many benefits, obstacles are not less, because the new digital economy is all about interconnectedness. Hence, we are going to explore how CFOs interact today, since the structure of business is absolutely under transformation. And let me get some more realistic takeaways from the leading CFOs that Team ET-CFO has brought together specifically for you at the turning point. But before I introduce them to you, and before we begin, let me suggest you something. Please post your questions, feedback in the comment box, which you can see on your screen on the right side, and also share your thoughts on the social media using the hashtag ET-CFO Turning Point. So let's begin. My first speaker today is Ms. Jyotsna Sharma, the CFO of Bridgestone. Ms. Sharma, glad to have you here.
Yeah, thank you.
Great. My next speaker is Mr. Ravi Vishwanath, the CFO of Quess Corp. Mr. Vishwanath, great to have you here.
Thank you very much, Amol. Good to be here with all close friends.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Vishwanath. My next speaker is Mr. Manish Goyal, the CFO of PayU. Mr. Goyal, glad to have you.
Thank you, Amol. Good to be here.
And my next speaker is Mr. Joy Basu, the CFO of Times Internet Limited. Mr. Basu, glad to have you.
Delighted to be here.
And my next speaker is Mr. Harshendu Bindal, the CFO, Managing Director, Head of Digital Strategy and Wealth Management, Franklin Templeton. Mr. Bindal, glad to have you as well.
Thank you, Amol.
So to begin with, the speakers, I have a very basic question, or may call it a soft question, because that's what our theme is of the Turning Point event. And the theme is mapping the reality in an abnormal world. So to begin with, I have this question for everyone, and I will start with you, Ms. Jyotsna Sharma. Tell us, how are you mapping the reality in an abnormal world when everything is uncertain, everything is unrealistic? You do not know whether there will be a lockdown tomorrow. You do not know whether there will be a third wave tomorrow. So considering these challenges, how are you mapping the reality today, specifically for your sector?
I guess the last 15 to 18 months have really taught us the importance of being agile in a world which is so uncertain, where you don't know what's next, not only from the perspective of personal being there or not being there, it's more from the way everything around us is changing, right? From businesses, business models, environment, everything is changing. So having a mind shift, having a mindset shift rather, with agility is what we all have learned over a period of time. And I would say we all have done pretty well to get this shift on us to survive through this pandemic. So I guess this whole situation of the pandemic has tested our abilities to adapt with agility and to be able to survive the situation sustainably.
Okay, I think that's a nice comment to begin with, Ms. Sharma. Mr. Goyal, I will come to you and I would like you to take the same question. How are you mapping the reality?
Okay, so look, for us and for everyone here, I think the things in digital space are bound to change. Technology will change, and so will the regulatory bodies who will cope up, with all the different things that have come up and bring in new regulations. What does not change for us is essentially frictionless payment experience for our merchants and for our customers. When it comes to how we cope with this ever-evolving landscape, I think the answer for us always been relying on database decision making, and that has kept us in good stead. Specifically talking of the pandemic, I think it's just brought so many changes to us that we have now lost track. And I think every day is different, and so are the decisions. I'll very specifically talk about some of the things that PayU has done in the recent months or so. When I think about changes and how the digital is changing, buy now, pay later and UPI are two big changes that have come in the last 3-4 years. While for one, which is buy now, pay later, we are the segment leaders. We launched in as early as 2017. But for UPI, we actually thought that was mostly going to be a B2C phenomena, and we did not build in our gateway solutions. So sometimes it works for us, sometimes we catch up, but that's the world that we live in today.
Okay, valid points, Mr. Goel. Mr. Basu, your views.
Yeah, I echo the thoughts of the earlier two speakers. What they're saying is very, very true. We have been, for the last several years, witnessing what I call a digital wave, a massive digital wave. Led on that wave, you now have a COVID tsunami. The world is never going to be the same again. We all know that. And we have to do things differently. We are, in fact, doing things differently as we speak, all of us, because the world has changed. Earlier, in the finance function, we used to all live and breathe and eat and think on the annual budget. And along with that, a 3-year plan. Today, an annual budget, I don't know, how much validity it has. Yes, we definitely do need planning, but the planning cycles need to get shorter. And as Jyotsna said, we need to be agile. Agile means to move around on quicksand. Yeah. If you're finding you're getting into quicksand, get out of it as fast as possible, cut your losses, right? Have a plan B or a plan C in place and move there very fast, very quickly. And even, oh, by the way, in many of our businesses, the models themselves are changing. We need to look inward and say that, look, is our model stress proof? Let us not take anything for granted. The world can change tomorrow. We should not one day be caught with a surprise and wake up and saying that the very business model of this organization is no longer relevant. What do I do? Agility is the key word. Agility means not just introspection, but action. It's not just a finance function. The entire management team, starting from the top, needs to do things differently and move fast, act fast, respond to change, not respond to change, anticipate change, make it happen, change before your competitors do, survive and thrive.
Very notable points. In fact, on that option B, we often look at in the same way because we do a lot of stories. So we maybe start with finance minister, but end up with a small finance company sometimes to get a quote, right? Because you should always have option B, C, D if you have option A as a big one. But valid points and very, very notable points, Mr. Basu. Mr. Vishwanath, I would like to have your views also. How are you mapping the reality for your sector and industry?
One thing we realized when the lockdown started last year was we cannot predict the future, but we can definitely make ourselves worthy of it. So having said that, what we decided, we went back to the drawing board. At that point of time, nobody knew how long would the pandemic last, what would be its impact on us, how would it impact our customers, our stakeholders, our employees, because we do have 350,000 employees in our country. So we were really worried about how the pandemic is going to impact all of us in the near term, medium term, and long term. So we went back to the drawing board and decided to change things that were under our control and look at things that were under our control. So that's when we said, let's focus on cost, let's focus on products, let's focus on collections. And lo and behold, last year turned out to be a fantastic year in terms of cost control, in terms of our collections, in terms of new products that came out of the market, out of our stable. So overall, we were in a better position in March of this year than what we were in March of last year. But that's actually a good thing. But having said that, if you go back and look at the way organizations have evolved over the last 10 years or over the last 15 years, from being tech-enabled organizations to being tech-led organizations, and today we are moving into driven organizations. Like if you see, most of the businesses today are built around technology platforms. Actually, if you take Uber as a technology company, more than it being a a taxi or a rideshare company, your Swiggy is a technology company, your Zomato, all these have a huge tech backbone. And the sooner you realize that you have to move towards that model quickly, you are in a better spot. At least you know what needs to be done for you to get there. Because one thing we know is, the only thing that is constant is change, and we have to accept it. And I don't think there's any other generation that has seen as much change as our generation has over the last 15, 20 years or 25 years. We've seen change so much. The pace of change used to be slow. It's far more accelerated today. What was relevant last year is no longer relevant today. And that's how it's going to be. The pace is going to be really fast. And so you've got to really start building your organization's capabilities to accepting the pace of change and not just the change itself, actually.
Noted your points as well, Mr. Vishwanath. I would like to take Mr. Bindal's view as well. What do you think, Mr. Bindal?
So this is an interesting question, something we talk about a lot, because when you look at the asset management and wealth management industry, there's a tremendous amount of change taking place. I think this change is interesting in that it throws up a lot of opportunities as well as challenges. I think what we've taken the view is that we feel we need to focus on some of the opportunities that are there, and you need to tackle the challenges, and for which I think you have to take a very hard look at some of the industry trends, evaluate one, how your current business model is getting impacted, and two, what are the opportunities being present, and what are the new lines of businesses or capabilities that can help generate revenue, be made available or be tackled through these changes. So I think we do a bit of both. In our industry, I think the role of technology, and especially digital technology, has become very important. And I think what we are trying to do is basically tackle it in two ways. One, for our existing business model, we are seeing how digital technology can help us enhance and improve client outcomes. And for us, clients are both financial advisors as well as end consumers. And so there is a lot of effort that we are putting in terms of investing in being a forward-looking, innovative firm. And we are making investments that help enhance our current business model. But at the same time, I think we are taking a more agile and an R&D approach to some of the newer trends as well. And we are running quite interesting experiments around how we can help our clients achieve better outcomes. And so I think the important thing is you need to allocate resources and capital to these experiments as well. And as these experiments take off, you have to show conviction and invest further to enhance these capabilities and introduce newer capabilities to our clients. So this is the dual approach that we are taking. And I think that is standing us well. And I think we've made some amazing traction with this approach, and we are quite excited about the future.
Okay, moving ahead, let me decode the digital economy with you guys. I mean, you are the honorable CFOs from your sectors, and trying your best, in fact, to give justice to your not only a company but contributing to your industry as well. And you must have, taken strong decisions specifically in last 15 months. So, Ms. Sharma, I will come to you and learn more about how are you actually, looking at the current situation. And the question directly to you is, what kind of changes that the new digital economy has made in your company and sector?
First thing is, I feel very lucky being at the right spot, right time to be heading both finance and IT functions in an organization.
Okay.
And they both are heavily involved and impacted to be on the forefront when we are doing this technology-led transformation, as Ravi said. And then sitting in the executive management, you're capable of driving the change. You're capable of making decisions for the good. So that's been a good part of this particular period of the pandemic. Now, when I look at the industry, as John mentioned, business models are changing and they are changing at a fast pace. So is it in our industry? For example, could you have ever imagined not buying a tire, but buying kilometers of a tire? So you do not invest in buying 4 tires, but you just pay as much as kilometer that you are using. And when these changes or shifts in business model happens, there's a lot of work backseen, both in the functions like IT, which have to drive the technology to support these models, but also in finance, which have to evaluate these models in multiple ways, in not just from a profitability perspective, but from a taxation angle, from a compliance and governance angle. So there's a huge shift in the industry from selling a product to selling a service. So what we call TaaS, tire as a service. So this is one example that I give of what is changing in the industry. The second important thing which is happening in the industry, automobile or tire industry, there are 2 trends. We have been seeing that automobile industry, when the pandemic came, sort of came to a moving situation. Whatever stocks were there got sold, and then the production sort of stalled. So there was no further movement or inventory available for sale. But for the tire industry, both these situations have been a win-win. Because tires have to keep on rolling. Either more tires roll or the same tires roll more. And the entire tire industry during this pandemic has seen a really positive growth and a lot more innovation. So there has been acceptability of digitalization at the other end, at a customer end, very fast. We have seen a lot of digital models of selling, collection, payments, end to end, being adapted very, very easily and quickly by the customers. At Bridgestone in particular, we saw the transformation whereby 95% of our customers have moved to an end-to-end digital collection platform. So there's no check or bank deposition reconciliation happening at all. So I think these have been the huge changes of mindset external as well to adapt to the changes on technology.
But Jyotsna, I have one question. But in the tire industry, leaving aside the truck tires, the 2-wheeler, 3-wheeler, 4-wheeler tires, was that not impacted by demand for the for tires? Do you witness that? Is there a shift? Are people buying tires digitally right now, or are they still going to the dealer?
It is shifting. We have seen almost around 5 to 6% of our buying online coming up, and that has encouraged us to really fast track our omni-channel build up. So we do expect the online buying of tires moving ahead at a faster pace. And that is facilitated by many other aspects like the payment or the easy availability of EMI, the fintechs. So these are all going to, along with just a tire online, it is also important tire as a service. So once you buy a tire online, you don't have to go to the dealer. The dealer should be at your doorsteps to fix your tire. So it comes as a package when you're moving to an online experience with a tire.
So you are still fulfilling that through the dealers?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, yeah, you have to get them into your entire network.
Good. I think Mr. Basu got his answer. And I think when you spoke specifically about the IT and finance CFO function together, I think budgeting will not be an issue for you. I think that's a major problem which most of the CFOs complain when they want to invest in IT. I think valid points, Ms. Sharma. And since you spoke about omni-channel payments, I have to get here Mr. Goel, considering his part of Payo, and we have seen a digital revolution in the payment space. Mr. Goel, digital has created so many layers for the payment, from biometric to QR code. My question to you is, since you're discussing the new digital economy, how are you dealing with the constant change? And just it's evolving. The payment cycle is absolutely evolving. So how, as a CFO, you're dealing with this change?
Let me first answer what it offers to us as an opportunity for the business, and then I'll come to the challenges that a CFO faces. So look, India has been at a rapid phase of digitization, especially on the payment side. So the last 10 years, CAGR has been somewhere in the range of 43-44%, and I don't see that changing for the next 10 years as well. Specifically of pandemic, like Jyotsna just talked about absolutely brilliantly, every offline business is going digital. They have to make sure that they reach their customers digitally. And that is where PayUping, plays a big role. We would have, onboarded about 100,000 new businesses, which were completely offline into the digital world so that they could reach out to their customers and collect. And for doing that, we have, solutions of all kinds. So omni-channel is one of our very important strategies. QR-based payments, POS machines, even though we used to be completely online, but we realized that just staying online won't help. Okay. The next opportunity that we are looking at in a big way is neobanks. So all of the small businesses require, help when it comes to their capital needs, their reconciliation needs, ARAP, working capital, whatever it may be. And that's where we are bringing in a neobank, which will essentially solve all these problems. These are the, opportunities that it creates for us. So far as the CFO is concerned, I think Joy touched upon the whole budgeting piece, right? I don't know how many times I actually had to revisit my budget. For us, our cycle works about 3-4 months before the year has to begin. We close our budget. So the last year budget, which is the 2021 budget, we closed in October of 19. So by the time we get into March, which is when the year has not begun, we realize that these numbers cannot be done. So I think that's one big challenge that a CFO comes across. How do we, look at profitability and how we still balance that with growth is the other challenge. I think that is one big issue that I think I was faced with because, being in a payment space, you have to continue to grow. You have to encash the opportunity that the market offers. Yet at the same time, how do you make sure that all of your costs are under control? You're able to actually, in a very competitive environment, because everybody is doing some kind of fintech, manage your margins and still, hit your profit targets or profit and loss targets is another challenge.
But, when you spoke about neobanks and the way you're growing, I can see there are many challenges as well. The new digital economy has opened up a market. But when you specifically look at neobanks or the RegTechs or these new areas, there are no regulations. So, this is just my submission. But the point I will bring here, Mr. Vishwanath, and take the question about the digital economy has opened a plethora. There are so many things, new customers, new regulations, new policies. But Mr. Vishwanath, if you could tell me, how are you dealing with the new digital economy in terms of, the customers, the policies, the regulations, because everything is changing rapidly.
If you look at the industry that we operate in, the staffing industry,
right.
It is actually, we've been talking about, our labor laws have been outdated. They're archaic. They need to be simplified. It's not been done in 75 years. And the government has been talking about it for many years now. What the pandemic did last year was to hasten the implementation of the 4 labor codes. That's when the government said it's about time that we did it. And it's still not been done. Although the pandemic is a year old, we still have not seen it's still not seen the light of the day in terms of the 4 labor codes being notified and announced. The 4 labor codes will simplify labor laws to a large extent and will formalize the Indian economy, because we all know that more than 50% of the Indian economy is in the shadow economy, and the government is doing everything possible to bring it back onto the regular platform. It started with demonetization. And then we went on to kind of the GST rollout pan-India. And now we are talking about labor law simplification, etc., all of which is towards formalizing the Indian economy. The government, while formalization would actually simplify labor laws, it's actually going to create a massive opportunity which can be addressed only through technology. The scale at which the opportunity actually is going to unfold can be addressed only through technology interventions. There's a new category of workforce called the gig workforce that we had probably never heard of until a few years ago. We've seen the emergence of a new gig workforce now. So there are lots of new things that are coming up, which we will have to embrace, which we'll all have to embrace and actually move along. And that's where the challenges are. So the opportunities are large. Right. So at the same time, it's got to be technology and these changes which are going to be driving it.
Yeah, very interestingly, to Manisha's point, I got dropped off at that point in time, but I have seen a very shocking change. The automobile component segment usually sees a huge amount of collection by checks, physical checks. And I have experienced it that every month you're collecting 5,000 checks, of which 1,000 used to bounce. And you can imagine the work behind 1,000 bounce checks. But with this change through the pandemic, with a touchless or paperless working, entire shift to automatic check handling has created a huge impact in speeding up the work collection with certainty. So I guess the entire digital economy, I guess checkbooks will not be seen in future days. Like, so these shifts are going to be seen, that some of the old habits and processes are just going to vanish.
I mean, that is true for all of us. I think all of us, I can't remember last time I signed a personal check.
Right.
But, I
Thanks
have
for
one
addition,
point,
yes.
if I may add,
Please,
to add
please.
to both what Ravi and Manish said, that the government, I'm not as optimistic, Ravi, about the government, changing in tandem with the changing world. That is always governments, have taken a lag, and, Indian government is no exception.
Noted your points, Mr. Basu. In fact, I wanted to come back to you only and ask the question, which Mr. Vishwanath also added about the gig economy. You're representing a sector where a lot of millennials, Gen Z generation is taking part into it. How are you looking at this new digital economy, and how are you preparing yourself, maybe to boost your company and take ahead this sector itself?
See, I have one advantage as compared to other industries in this company. This is a digital company. Times Internet is a digital company. It does nothing else. Whatever it does is only in the digital field. So we eat, breathe, think, sleep all the time digital. We have been very pleasantly surprised by this what do you call it, COVID. Terrible things have happened, but one thing has happened is our traffic has gone up mostly. I mean, there are some exceptions here and there. Maybe the property company is not doing as well as it was. Maybe there's a table reservation, food reservation company that's not doing that well as it was. But by and large, the rest of it, in fact, the numbers have gone up there. And we find this trend will continue. And you're absolutely right. Our data shows that the bulk of the users still are young people, below 30, below 35. And that also reflects in the average age of my organization. I'm probably the oldest person there, right? We think young. We look to the younger generation who understand stuff like gig. Gig is a very fascinating term. I myself learned about it just a few months ago, where you're paid by task. You go and do this particular task and you're paid for it. It's like an Uber, ride from place A to place B. This is the future.
Thank you so much, Mr. Basu, for that submission. And I have Mr. Bindal as well. Let me ask him. Let me get Mr. Bindal here. Mr. Bindal, what do you think? What kinds of changes the new digital economy has brought into your sector, and how are you preparing your company for that?
So, as I mentioned, we are facing tremendous amount of change in our industry. On the one hand, in dealing with financial advisors, we feel that technology has been critical to, offer world-class investment products and solutions to our advisors. And especially, when you look at digital wealth management and the growth there and the changes being brought about in that space, there is a lot happening. And I think it requires asset managers such as us to invest in the digital wealth economy or capabilities. And we're very focused on bringing out cutting edge solutions. I think a lot of people may not realize that technology and financial products or services no longer exist independently. The value unlocked via technology has considerably enhanced the efficacy of financial advice. And we believe that wealth management platforms help to enhance investment management so that advisors can deliver solutions to their clients at a faster pace and at scale. So this has become one important area of change, and we are investing in this change and are looking to enhance our capabilities. The other thing I should talk about is from the investor perspective. I think investors now, in every aspect of their life, and especially because of the growth of digital technology, expect personalization in every aspect of their life, including in their investments. And so what this is doing is this is furthering the demand for scalable solutions. So from a consumer side, if you look at it, The narrative on goals has also evolved. We see a focus on unique, dynamic asset allocation and personalized portfolios. And the emphasis has moved from providing products to providing solutions. And so I think what asset managers like us need to do is invest in digital capabilities and technologies to provide that personalized solutions to consumers. And so this is another area of focus and change for, it's an area of change for the industry and something we are very focused on. So both for advisors as well as end clients, we're seeing a lot of change and opportunity. And I think we are gearing up towards providing solutions of the future that encompass not only our investment management expertise, but also technology and wealth management practice solutions bundled into holistic solutions. And we are very focused on delivering these solutions to our clients. So that's the approach we've taken.
Okay, moving ahead, Ms. Sharma, I will come back to you. We spoke about the opportunities, changes, development, specifically into the new digital economy, but it comes with a risk as well. It comes with the threats as well. What are the threats to your business in the new digital economy?
Every digital shift which is going to happen is going to be associated with risks of data, risks of loss of possession, or you won't feel and see the notes. You will not feel things like it's all going to be online. So there are going to be risks associated to that insecurity. Beyond that, when we are doing digital, it's more about data, loss of data, or theft of data for multiple users. So when we talk about, let's say if I'm talking about the tire industry and I'm going digital, that means all my customers, whether it's B2B or B2C, are quite available in the cloud. And what happens if the cloud bursts and the data is stolen? So those are the risks which businesses are going to face onto it. So there are these types of challenges or few risks that I see directly associated with digital. The other risk which comes to the people perspective, I guess digital is all about technology. And there is a generation of people who are technology ready. I think those who do not keep pace to adapt with the change are either going to lose jobs or going to fall back in this journey of digital transformation. So we will see the consequences of a new generation coming and taking lead. And when a new generation takes lead, a lot more changes because entire ecosystem and thought process changes. So I guess we will have to be mentally prepared to foresee these types of changes and change our laws and regulations to it, change our thought process and acceptability to these changes of digital.
Jyotsna, I think you'll agree with me that possibly the biggest risk that any business, not just yours, mine, but any business anywhere in the world faces today is the risk of obsolescence. Whatever product I'm making, whatever services I'm, whatever marketing,
Absolutely.
could either become obsolete tomorrow or somebody can do it far better than me and I therefore become obsolete. I become a dinosaur. And we have seen this time and again, and it's happening much faster. Blue chips are becoming stone chips.
Totally agree, Joy, to what you say. The overhaul of this entire product processes, systems, adaptability to technology.
And which case you need to adapt. Kodak. I'm told Kodak actually invented this, this digital camera. But their business was such a cash cow, making so much of money, etc., that they, didn't do anything with their invention. Philips, I'm told, invented the cellular phone, the first mobile phone.
Right.
And your cases of BlackBerry, but so many other cases. We used to use, I don't know how many of you remember, at least I remember in my time, the first spreadsheet we used, and I thought it was some gift from heaven, was called Lotus 123. Right. It just went away when Microsoft built a much better product, which is what Uber is doing today to the taxi world, for instance.
I think good submission, Mr. Basu, from you. And in fact, we are using these terms called Kodak moment or Nokia moment or something like that. But on the risk or threat front, let me bring Mr. Goel here. And let me tweak a question for you. Slightly, let me tweak it, Mr. Goel, for you, which I asked to Ms. Sharma. And the question is, when we look at the junk food, which is, favorite for all of us, though it looks delicious, it brings calories, right? Extra calories, and then you have to burn it, right? That's an amazing part of that junk food. The same way, when we look at digital, it brings extra risk like cyber risk. That is one of the very, very important and a very big risk today, which every CFO and every company is facing, and specifically into the finance sector. So if I ask you specifically, how are you dealing with it? How are you burning your cyber calories?
Okay, I think if there is one thing that keeps me awake, is this risk. We have been very, very, very cognizant of the fact that our business, where if anything goes wrong, the next day settlements, a few hundred crores will not go out to the right bank accounts, and what that will mean, our business will actually fold in no time. The kind of data that we hold, all the financial information that we hold is just so much risky, and the responsibility as an organization is just so high that we cannot falter there. So clearly, it's a risk that you have rightfully called out. Let me just tell you what we can do as CFOs. I think for CFO, it's very, very critical that we understand where the information is, what is that information, how is it secured, and who might want to steal it, and how they might want to gain access to it. If we understand about all of this risk that sits, work with the technology teams, work with the security organization, and build the right solutions, the right frameworks, so that we are able to protect it, is the most important thing that we must do. I think we also need to be actually fully prepared, because I can't say that in 5 years that I've spent with the company, there has not been one single attack. There have been attacks, but how do you deal with that? How do you find where the vulnerabilities were, and how do you make sure that you fix those? Were they issues because which can be called manual? Were they issues which are systems related or process related, and so on and so forth? I think the last thing that I want to say is that I get all the decisions to make in terms of where the money has to go. I think this investment is the first one that takes priority over anything else.
In fact, would you agree that the risk has given rise to an opportunity? You've got the whole industry now set up, ethical hacking and others, all the consultants, Big Four, everyone is involved in this thing.
Joy, one attack costs on an average about $4 million. There is so much data and so many reports around it. So,
Yes.
so really, companies can just go down. It has reputation risk, regulatory risk. It has customers, all of those kind of things.
Yesterday, I read something first thing in the morning. I got the fright of my life that some $600 million of cryptocurrency was stolen by some hackers somewhere in the world, and then they returned it also. Yeah. So I don't know why they did that.
There are a lot of stories on the cryptocurrency front. In fact, at ETBFSR, we cover a lot of stories specifically on the cryptocurrency front. There are, in fact, the biggest threat in that segment is about on the Ponzi cryptocurrencies. But thank you, Mr. Goyal. It was a very, very remarkable thought. And
I think Jyotsna wanted to say something. Sorry, I interrupted.
What I have is, I think all the CFOs would have experienced this, that to get an agility, to get the change, we are talking about empowerment.
Right.
We are looking at empowering functions and managers down the line with decision making. Right. And which at some point in time, the decision making was sort of centralized with CFOs, either with regulatory aspects or financial aspects. Right. Now, it's critically important to make this shift in the thought process of CFOs to be involving other functions in the course of empowerment, because it would not be possible now to be a central agency to control everything. Then empowerment is the crux of agility. So I think there will have to be methodologies whereby we move towards more engaging, involving, and educating on governance, compliance, and these aspects, where each individual is also equally responsible along with empowerment.
Okay, I think valid points, Ms. Sharma. Thank you for adding that. Mr. Vishwanath, I have a very important question for you, because we are talking a lot about digital. We are talking a lot about technology. So my question to you is, obviously the CFOs are using technology, but to decode the new digital economy, what are the emerging technologies that the CFOs should use according to you? What are the key technologies they are going to use, to decode the new digital economy?
One shouldn't get frazzled by the term digital economy, digitization and stuff like that, because we've been seeing that happen over time. It's just that the pace of change has actually increased. Okay, one cannot, as a CFO, one cannot lose sight of basic fundamentals of what we need to do. Those have not changed actually. The economy. We might have a digital economy, we might have everything else digital, but the basic fundamentals of a balance sheet, of a P&L, of a cash flow, of my ROE, of my operating cash flows, etc. None of these things have changed. So I don't think there's anything particular that a CFO needs to be aware of in the new digital world, other than staying abreast of what's happening in this digital world, in the sense that it could be a blockchain related development, it could be big data, it could be some artificial intelligence, machine learning. All these are terms that we hear on a daily basis in the new digital kind of era. We just have to be aware of it. But the fundamental thing is we can't lose sight of the basics that we've all grown up with, which is your P&L, your balance sheets and stuff like that. While on one side, the businesses need to be aware of all these changes, because you need to be able to help the businesses grapple with these changes. Because if you don't do it, the businesses will go down in no time, and the competition will take over before you can actually bat an eyelid. I don't think there's anything particular that a chartered accountant should be aware of, other than be in the know of what's happening around them. You can't close your eyes, you can't play ostrich and expect that things will be normal. You've got to understand what's happening around you. You've got to get your hands and feet dirty to some extent, and get involved in the tech discussions. Actually, I mean, that's when you understand what's happening in the world of technology in your organization, what's happening, all over the place. Let me also tell you what we have done. There was a time when finance started by having a role as a business partner, actually. So you had a finance business partner to businesses. Soon that role kind of included HR business partners. And today we have also gone to a stage where we have IT business partners for each of our businesses, where the role of the business partner is to really translate the business needs of a company into technology frameworks, actually.
Right.
And this is something that I'm actually very keen to watch. I mean, I watch these things very closely to understand what are the changes the business is asking for in their respective areas, and that gives you a sense of what's happening around in the world.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I'd just like to add one point to that. It's very well summed up. You're absolutely right. Fundamentals, basics have not changed, and that you must realize. The way in which we grasp those basics or get that information, that is changing. One needs to keep pace with the time. The only one point to add to that, Ravi, is nowadays we do not have the luxury of time. Earlier, the quarterly results could come out, at the end of whatever, 1 month after the end of the quarter, and everybody would sit patiently and wait for it. Now, information is needed much faster. The systems have to be more agile, number one. The second point I'd like to make is that it's no longer sufficient to have the luxury of being able to have our internal data and analyze it under a microscope. We need to have external data as well, relevant external data necessary for the businesses and information. I'll give an example. If you take Jyotsna's industry or the tire industry, I have some little knowledge of the tire industry, Jyotsna, because I used to work for a tire company many years ago. So little knowledge is always dangerous. But as I say, for instance, in those days, I remember we used to study these sales reports. What is sales? It is tires which have been dumped on the distribution. And it's interesting. Every month I used to see those numbers. I remember week by week. I forget what the numbers were, but mythical numbers. Week 1, 2, 3 numbers are pretty small. Week 4, you see suddenly a huge hockey stick because you've dumped it on the distribution. But the end customer, Jyotsna, does not need your tire only in the 4th week. The end customer needs it throughout. The redistribution, where it's ultimately ending up, right, when it is reaching the customer's hands, where the stocks are piling up, etc. That information is very important for decision making. So they need to be married into the information systems of the organization. No longer do we have the luxury of saying our own historical data is sufficient for decision making. Those days are long over.
Absolutely right, Joy.
Absolutely, Joy. There's no two ways about it.
Right.
I think, you're actually bang on when you say that that we need to be aware of what's happening around us. Especially, this is competition is very severe today, and it's just a matter of time before things actually can turn, can actually turn tide. So the point is, how do we compare data? What kind of stuff that we use? The business intelligence part is what plays a very important role. How much of the business is, what are the relevant things to keep track of? What do you, there's so much of information that there's how do you get the relevant insights on a regular basis, which helps you move along?
That's a very good point. In fact, how do you, just too much of information sometimes, I think. How do you segregate good information from bad information, from useless information? That itself is not clear.
Correct.
Otherwise, often you end up, right, chasing the woods for the trees.
Correct.
Yes. I think everybody is facing that challenge, because today data is not the problem. Everybody has tons of data. In fact, all the bankers in the world have tons of data. It's just that it's not segregated well. So it's not organized well. So they do not know even how to use artificial intelligence to find out which customer wants what. Mr. Bindal, I will also ask, or I would also like you to tell us, how CFO should transform their functional areas, considering the digital revolution, because there are a lot of changes happening in the financial areas as well. And how do you see the transformation happening in the new digital economy in that sector?
I think for CFOs, the starting point is to acknowledge the necessity of reallocation of capital and resources to build or buy the infrastructure and ecosystem that can harness the power of digital solutions and practice management tools. I think the differentiator for a successful CFO is to pay attention to the evolving future dynamics. I think this is important for building conviction. And once the conviction is in place, innovation, agility, and speed takes center stage. And I think CFOs need to evaluate their capital spend with an open mind to various options and find a right balance between using capital to buy capabilities or build them. And this becomes an important decision. Another aspect that we think about is that an important consideration is, like, unlike traditional operating models, digital brings with it a whole bunch of other challenges. And some of it may be lack of visibility in cost benefit analysis, in absence of proven outcomes, projects being agile versus a more traditional, waterfall approach. And this means a certain lack of certainty on overall spend. But we also see this as an opportunity for CFOs. And by trusting in their teams and taking measured steps and, increasing allocation based on the initial success. So all in all, to me, digital will place certain challenges, and I think it's important for CFOs to be agile. Another aspect I would like to point out is, CFOs are constantly challenged on quarterly financial results, and but they also need to invest in the future. And I think digital is going to be important not only to disrupt the traditional business models, but to accelerate the growth of the firm. And I think CFOs need to take the long-term view and support the digital capabilities from this longer-term perspective. So these are some of the points that come to mind as we look at how CFOs, adopt to this changing environment.
Wish I could have, some more time, but, before I wrap up, I will ask one question to all of you. And that is the theme of our conclave as well, which is the turning point. So starting with you, Mr. Basu, what is the next turning point that you see in your sector, in your industry, and at CFO's desk?
We're probably witnessing it already, is the elimination of paper to the extent possible. My organization and every organization, including my colleagues here, I think we basically use paper today only for where the government insists that you must have a piece of paper. That's gone out of the window completely. The second big turning point, of course, it's not fixed for the finance function, is we got to get used to this new style of working. I don't think the world is ever going to come back to life as we knew it before the pandemic, going to office at 9 o'clock and working there till 6 o'clock, coming back home, and work and life are segregated. Now these things are kind of mixed up there. And while we will, God willing, return to some kind of a normalcy, hopefully sometime soon, it will not be the normal, the norm that we knew, the normal that we knew earlier. It will be different. So the answer is, without trying to predict what it is, one should be able to, shall I say, as I say again, the same question, the theme of this conversation seems to be change, to be ready for change. And I think all our organizations have adapted pretty well to the pandemic. I never thought 2 years ago, if you asked me that everyone's going to sit at home and the work will get done, and I would have said, come on, that's not going to happen. You can't collaborate sitting at home. But yes, we are collaborating. Today we are having this conference. Normally we would have had to have it in, some hotel somewhere, etc., and spend time going there. But we are doing things, and we will be seeing more of this. Things will be done differently. I'm sorry that doesn't answer your question, because I really don't have an answer as to what exactly those changes are going to be. All I can tell you, there'll be big changes, and as Ravi rightly said, the pace of change will intensify.
So noted your points. In fact, sometimes there are no direct answers. There are perspectives. There are experiences that you share which help other people to learn. Mr. Goel, your views. What are the next turning points that you're seeing in your industry, your sector?
Largely, I agree with what Joy has said. For me to believe that audits will happen, and we've got 2 consecutive statutory audits completed, without being physically with the auditors, working with them, and so on and so forth, it's just impossible. And we have had to change our beliefs. We have had to change our style of working, etc. I think the only other thing that I can talk about is, and for the data-driven industries like we are, I think decision making and how do we manage everything around us is going to change, and it's changing already. It's changed in a big way. I think the way we look at data, the way we try to make some sense out of it, the way we see how it can be made meaningful for a lot of people than just us as consumers. I think that is the other change that I see happening soon.
Mr. Vishwanath?
Our industry is a bit different, actually, Amol, in the sense that the manpower industry is highly, a large part of the manpower industry still continues to be in the informal sector. The percentage is as high as 97% of outsourced manpower is still in the informal sector. And we do believe that some of the reforms that's currently taking place will lead to massive formalization of manpower, of labor, which augurs well for the economy. It augurs well for companies like us who operate in this space, because the opportunity that it presents us cannot be addressed without a proper technology backbone, without digitization. I mean, there are not many companies in the brick and mortar space like us who can probably say that we will grow at a 30%, say, over the next 15 years. And that's what the opportunity actually presents to us, and which cannot be done without digitization. So there is a massive amount of digital infrastructure that we need to put in place, not just with ourselves, but in the ecosystem in which we operate. It could be our employees, it could be our recruiters, it could be our banks, it could be various, our clients. It's the ecosystem readiness which is actually going to play a very important role going forward in anything digital that you do.
Okay, notable points, Mr. Vishwanath. Ms. Sharma?
Yeah. I guess we are amidst the turning point. I think the pandemic itself was a turning point for entire globe. And what I would look at real change is you would see a lot of things disappear. And to give you examples is currency. I mean, if you're talking about digital money, physical currencies might disappear. If you're talking about work from anywhere, a lot of offices would be flexible, or fixed offices would disappear. So the era is of a lot of things disappearing in a fixed form. So we are at a turning point. Digital is going to drive the future. The digital revolution has changed into an evolution. How fast we adapt is where we will be left ahead or behind. So
Amol, one point. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, please.
Amol, if you were to look at the kind of NASDAQ today consists of 40% of NASDAQ is actually tech companies today, and that's a sign of things to come. So and we are seeing it happen. I'm in Bangalore, I can see tech in almost every nook and corner of the city, actually. The number of unicorns that are coming up, they're all in the tech space, actually. So, I mean, that's how technology, I mean, it's going to overtake all of us, hopefully in a pleasant way.
Right, notable points. In fact, let's not even talk about NASDAQ. Let's not go far. Just look at the Sensex and the stock market rally, which happened in last 2 months, right? Top companies, specifically on the startups, whether it's Zomato, Paytm, Mobikwik, all have lined up to gather billions of dollars, right, from the stock market, and they're raising that much funds. So I think very, very valid points. Mr. Bindal, your views on the turning point. What is the next turning point that you see in your sector?
Well, this is a very interesting question. One of the things that we are beginning to think about more and more is when you specifically look at our industry, which is investment management or asset management, we feel that asset management companies of the future will deliver their investment capabilities both to financial advisors as well as end consumers using technology. So a lot of these capabilities will be built using technology. They will be distributed via digital channels, and they will be distributed on the advisor desktops and consumer desktops. And so they will have to be deployed, these kind of capabilities at scale with the clients. And so this is a very different approach to how asset management has functioned in the past. And I think firms that adopt to this change will be the asset management firms of the future. So this is a vision that we as a firm are working towards and are building our capabilities, keeping these changes in mind. And I think for forward-looking firms in our area, this is not only a challenge, but more importantly, a very big opportunity, which we are very excited to build towards.
Thank you so much. I think it was a great learning for me, and I'm sure the participants must have copied what all of you said. There were really some remarkable points. Thank you so much, Mr. Goel, Ms. Sharma, Mr. Vishwanath, Mr. Basu, and Mr. Bindal for sharing your perspective, sharing your vision of next turning point, and telling us how you are decoding the new digital economy. Thank you so much for your participation.
Thank you, everyone, for touching every question in detail. Certainly a discussion with many takeaways. Dear viewers, there is an expo area on this platform. Please visit that area and explore the booth set up by our partners. For any technical query, you can visit the help desk. Our representatives are there to guide you.